And I want to bring in Mark Martin, CEO of MartinConsulting. That's an aviation safety firm that works with airlines and governments on improving safety. Mark joins me on the phone from New Delhi. So, Mark, based on what we know to this point, look, you work with airlines and governments on improving safety. While we still don't know exactly the cause of this, what alarm bells are ringing for you based on what we know so far?
Morning, Omar. Certainly this is a dark day in aviation and probably a black band event for aviation over the last 100 years. Nearly $20 billion are spent on improving safety for aircraft, including airspace management. Technologies to prevent this very same incident were invented and created 60 years ago. There's a 1 in trillion % chance of an incident like this occurring, and it's unfortunate that we see something like this happen in 2025. Now, we also must understand that that airspace from Dulles over to Fort Worth to from Dulles to Andrews Air Force Base to Reagan is one of the busiest, most intense, heavily flown, highly patrolled helicopter and air transport airspace. And when you have something like this with a helicopter impacting an aircraft, I mean, the odds of that even occurring, the speeds are going to be low, the altitudes has got to be the same altitude. And clearly something has gone catastrophically wrong, because visibility was fine. It was only temperatures that were pretty low there. But for the pilots disoriented to disregard an aircraft on collision course, whether one was climbing or descending, is just crazy, and it's something unheard of, and we should never hear of something like this. And one would expect something like this to occur more commonly in third world countries, but certainly not the U.S. And I think the NTSB, the FAA, the U.S. Military Aviation Safety Board, everybody need to come together to establish why this occurred, and whatever the reasons, whether it's human factors or whether it's what we know in aviation or we call the shell approach, which is software, hardware, equipment, live wire, or whichever element is to be blamed. This is the time to ensure that we fix this, because we should never see something like this occur again.
And you mentioned the unique circumstances here of a plane actually colliding with a helicopter, and how unique those circumstances have to be. I mean, we know this plane was in its final approach, likely seconds from actually touching down. Is there a difference, aviation safety-wise, in either training or mechanically or defense system-wise within an aircraft in protecting against collision with another plane, for example, at a higher altitude, versus collision with a helicopter, which of course would be at a lower one?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And in fact, it's the same technology. And mind you, this is a helicopter with a passenger jet, not even a prop-driven turboprop or a piston aircraft. Okay, so we've got enough technologies in play. We've got ADSB in, ADSB out. We've got TCAS, Airborne Collision Avoidance System. We have air traffic control surveillance. We have primary radars, secondary radars. We've got enough technologies to prevent something like this from occurring. We've got TCAS resolution, conflict advisory, resolution advisory. The levels of safety intervention are immense, and each are layered and tiered. So, but for something like this to happen, where, like I said, it's a 1 in a trillion chance. I mean, a helicopter that flies at about 60 to 80 knots, and a descending landing aircraft which touches down at 120 knots. The speeds, typical speeds are are at least 300 knots separate. When one aircraft cruises at nearly 300 knots and the other one does 120, 130 knots, it's impossible for this to happen. And I think clearly something has gone. I mean, this just like I said, I don't want to speculate. The guys on the helicopter are no more. We've lost the crew. Everybody out there are mourning the loss of a family member, a friend, a colleague, and I think we should not speculate. The best thing we can do is push and urge for that investigation to take place, and it should be a fair, balanced investigation, because we have a military aircraft involved as well. And I think collectively everybody needs to come together to stop something like this from happening again, ever.
Yeah, I mean, the scenes that we're seeing right now, absolutely horrific, as these search and rescue first responders continue to try and work through the scene on these frigid waters. Mark, Martin, really appreciate the time and perspective. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me on TV. Thanks, bye.
Of course. Meanwhile, the U.S. president posted online that the crash, quote, looks like it should have been